Look at that. So I've been using the Panasonic GX8 for ages, meaning 2014. Heaps of my short films were made with this little gem. It's just small, portable. Obviously, it's the kit lens right now. You could do better easily. And then I upgraded to the GH5s. This camera does most of what I need these days, like just short films. It's good. It's perfect. And then we jump to this one. The GH6 is the miracle camera that is a successor to the GH5. So again, you get the stabilization of the GH5, which I don't have in my GH5s. Higher megapixel for pictures and videos, and so far, my mind was blown by the quality. And recently at work, they asked me to buy two cameras, and I went for the GH6. The second camera, I went full frame, and so I'm filming right now with the S1H. For short films, I'm cost conscious, so I've settled with this one for a long time, and now I'm perfectly happy with the GH5s. So I'm really curious what's the step of quality between this one and the new two. Also the jump in full frame. I'll start right into low light performance with all four cameras on a 50mm equivalent lens and using the 180-degree shutter rule. So it's 1/50th of a second at 25 FPS. Now you're seeing the GX8 at ISO 1600. The GX8 had to be shot in the flatter cine-like D profile, while I used Vlog for the other cameras. If I expose the city properly, the GX8 falls apart. I'm lifting the shadows where all the nasty compression artifacts and noise was hidden. I can still lift the exposure a bit and add enough contrast so that the trees aren't just compression, but I can't do much about the color noise in the clouds. At ISO 3200, surprisingly, I get an image that's even more workable in post. My instinct was to shoot lower ISO to get less noise, but with a small 8-bit camera like this, the better file turns out to be the higher ISO. That's the GH5s at the same ISO 3200. The trees are more defined, the clouds aren't a mess so much. With 10 bits, that's just way more info into the image, and when you lift the shadow, there's actual data in there. At ISO 6400, you could choose to have the skyline really bright. There's more noise in the wooden area, but it's decent. If you push higher, the noise becomes distracting. This would be the color grade that I'd do. Bright skyline and more contrast in the trees, so less ugly noise at the same time. Let's go back a last time to the GX8 at ISO 6400. It's quite a messy image, but if I had to use it, I'd work the noise back a bit. The jump to the GH6 is striking, but I'm grading heavily and it makes the noise pop. Back to the GH5s, it seems the image is more controlled. It could be unfair to the GH6 because it's shot 10 minutes apart and the clouds aren't the same. The noise in the sky is heavy. On the S1H, graded to match the GH6, I also see a lot of color noise, but you can see both cameras generate extremely rich and crisp images. Zoomed in, you can see I've pushed the image past their breaking point. Let's go to ISO 6400. Get more exposure in camera instead of pushing it in post. A lovely GH6 image, but noise is still way too apparent in the sky. The S1H is just wow, with the wooden area visible enough. I wish this side by side was shot at the same time to have the same clouds though. I also doubt my results with the GH6 because it's so noisy. Meanwhile, what? The GH5s holds up super well at ISO 12800. The S1H at ISO 12800. Look on the top left if you want to see noise, but overall stellar performance for the S1H. With the GH6, I'm seeing the same noise. Whether I lift exposure in post or via ISO, I still get the same color noise. With the dynamic boost stuff, it's the same. Here's a comparison of dynamic boost on and off, but dynamic boost won't shine here anyway, so it's a bit unfair. Look at the original files. I'm getting strange results with the GH6 definitely, but I can just add contrast and then I can get the tree shots to look pretty much the same and all usable. And I can even throw back the GX8 in there because look, if you're going to grade with high contrast, you may end up with the $9,000 image not looking vastly different from the $500 image. It's when you want flexibility that the images fall apart. I was happy and surprised with the performance of the GH5s so far, but look how muddy it's looking now compared to the S1H. Only the S1H still kind of holds up. And the final test is with the only cameras with the ISO going up to 25,600, the GH5s and the S1H. Same observation, GH5s has now soft colors that are off and the aggressive noise suppression has blurred the trees. Again here I can grade both image to look and feel the same, but if I had to push it, then the S1H has the superior image. Now to daylight shots. These comparisons will be mostly about dynamic range with all cameras at their lowest base ISO, and I'm stopping down, reducing daytime exposure via shutter speed and not via ND filters. Also gone for this test is the use of the same lens for macro four thirds camera. First you'll see all clips as they were shot, with the GX8 using Cine D, the GH5s using Vlog Lite, and the GH6 and S1H using the full Vlog. Now the same shots, but kinda matched together. The GH6 has dynamic boost on, so the base ISO is 2000. All shots side by side, I can't help but notice that the GH6 is noisy because it's at a higher ISO. It's the same weird feeling that I've done something wrong. I've converted the GX8 image to look flat, and there's no data in the sky. There's no details in there. It's pure white, and you can observe that on the scopes. Even the cables are gone. What you can see is how the full Vlog profile gives you more in the highlights than the Vlog Lite of the GH5s, or that it's the result of the dynamic boost for the GH6 and the improved full frame sensor for the S1H having just better dynamic range. If I color correct the image to add contrast and completely ignore the sky, then yes, the expensive cinema camera is not super different than the cheap old camera. But instead, if I try to express the clouds, I start to see them on the GH6 and S1H, while the GH5s has muted highlights, so it's kind of like gray, it's just gray. There's nothing to recover on the GX8. If I shut down dynamic boost, then the clouds become more like they are on the GH5s with less defined layers and dynamic range. Side by side with dynamic boost on and off, you can see the noise that comes with having a base ISO of 2000. I say the situation where you'd want boost on are when an actor's in a dark room and you have a bright large window beside the actor. You'd need to see that extra dynamic range, but on an outside shot like this, you may as well skip it. Even away from the sun, we get the same result with the GX8 doing somewhat a decent job, even with the lower bitrate 8-bit. but it's looking super digital. The richest, most cinematic image is easily the S1H with its low pass filter. The GH6 doesn't have a low pass filter, but the footage is soft because of the 10 to 25mm 1.7. It's about the same color correction on the GH5s, GH6 and S1H, but the GH6 and S1H have a vibrant grass in the middle, and I can't really explain it. And now to finish, let's look exclusively at the dynamic boost on the GH6. It's really hard to notice any difference, but it's there in the scopes and the highlights. And is it a real comparison video if I don't do the autofocus tracking?